Good evening. Welcome into Gridiron Eve, and we are back. It's been a long year. Uh, Mike Huesmann joining me, John Vogel. How are you doing, Mike?
Awesome. I'm excited for this time of year, just like you are. Always an exciting. We got a little uh, few games week zero to wet the beat, but got a full slate this week. It's exciting.
Yeah, no, it's going to be great. We're going to have all kinds of different stuff. You're going to be defending your title, as we've already made a big deal about on social media. Uh, I'm coming for it this year. I'm
Yeah,
coming for it. So get ready. You
I knew
ready?
you would, and it was one of those. I mean, I think about the last. Like I was breaking this down, funny enough, with friend of the show Thor Nystrom, and I said, the first 3 weeks you really dominated me last year. It was when, and I kind of, it was something that didn't quite hit me. I started making a lot more headway in the challenges when I was picking a lot more Mac games. For whatever reason, I I don't know I don't know that I watch it anymore than other football. It I'm sure part of it was luck, part of it was knowing who was injured. That conference is always so wonky with the midweek games, and out of conference they all get their asses kicked for money, and it was just one of those. Once I started going heavier on the Mac, it was working. So maybe it was an aberration, maybe not. We'll see.
You stuck with it.
Yeah.
You stuck with it and
Mhm.
pulled out the victory. So I do have it set up this year that we're going to really be in depth tracking these picks this year because I can't let you get away with this again. I have to make sure that we
Yeah.
have this thing squared away so that I am set up to win no matter what. No, I'm just kidding. It's not like that. But there's a couple things that we get started with. The first thing I think is it's the annual update. What is going on in the life of Mike Huesman?
There have been significant changes. So when we were doing this last season, I was a doctoral student at the University of South Carolina, working on my PhD in special education.
Mm-hmm.
I still have my dissertation to finish, but since then I have moved and taken an assistant professor position at Marshall. So go herd. I am
Mm-hmm.
I am in Huntington now, and right now I am about a block away from Joe and Edwards Stadium, where the Herd will take on Albany in their season opener, but not Albany's season opener. They had a week zero game. So, yeah,
Yes, it did.
made the move a few states away and really enjoying it. It is an awesome college town that in the 3 weeks I've been here, I've really grown accustomed to. And what's up with you?
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think you're still writing for you're still writing for Mike Farrell over there on Mike Farrell Sports, right?
I am, yes. Though the last month coinciding with my move, I've only probably put out 2 or 3 articles, but kind of my niche with Mike that I've fallen into has been talking about the coaching carousel and G5 teams. So yeah,
There you go. Yeah. And yes, I mean, you're good at this. You know what I'm saying? Like that's why in the fantasy league this year, I think you actually you've smoked the draft, and if you haven't noticed, I've pretty much deconstructed everything that I did and sent people away and traded for other people, and it's a big
so
giant mix. I'm
uh, two
blowing it
years
up.
ago, 2 years ago, Nystrom did that, made it to the championship, ended up having like three guys that he
Mm-hmm.
drafted, went deep in the playoffs. So it can work. Sometimes enough to work. Yeah.
Sometimes, and we'll get into fantasy and all the different stuff because we got some good matchups that we're going to be able to discuss throughout the night. For me, still covering the draft. Isn't
Yeah.
that crazy? So now doing it for NFL Draft Lounge, working still with the agents, doing the background stuff, and then got a huge project that we're working on that's under wraps at the moment that I hope to be able to announce at some point. It is a huge, awesome project. So
Awesome. I look forward to hearing about it
awesome.
when
Like,
that's ready to
yeah,
go public. Yeah.
absolutely. As soon as I can, I will let everybody know because
Yeah.
it's exciting. But let's start here with this first thing that you wanted to get into. You wanted to talk about the top four playoff teams, right?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that most viewers want to hear, and you see everybody covering the sport preseason who your four playoff team's going to be. So I think it's a good thing to talk about.
So for number one, who is it?
I think
Who
it
is
has
it?
to be the
Who's
Bulldogs.
number one?
I think Georgia
Yeah, it
has
has to.
an easy path and a great roster. I'd be shocked if they lose 2 games, and if they only lose one, they're making it. So I think Georgia's the first.
Yeah, until Georgia is beat. I mean, even taking away the 10 draft picks that they surrendered to the league last year, until they're beat, they are the team to beat. And this Carson Beck, this quarterback, I'm telling you, I've seen him. I've seen him, man. I've seen him. He's good.
Yeah.
He's really good. So they're a loaded team. They don't rebuild. They just reload. So until somebody brings them down, that's number one, obviously. So number two, who's your number two?
I'm going to continue the trend of familiar picks and go Michigan. They're going to be good. They've had the best O-line play the last couple of years. They're going to run the ball well. I think they're going to be tough to beat again, even with the coaching turmoil. And I found it really odd that there's not just one guy that's going to be the interim. Jim's going to mix it up over all 3 of the games. One game it's going to be Minter, the D coordinator. One it's going to be Sherrod Moore, the O coordinator. And then another game it's going to be 2 assistants co-coaching, his son Jay being one of them. But Michigan's going to be in it at the end. And I feel like right now we could almost set our watch to whoever wins the game is going to make the playoffs. And I think it's Michigan.
And that's what we've seen the last 2 years, right?
Yeah.
And I'm agreeing with you too. Michigan's my number 2 team coming into the year. You mentioned the offensive line. We got to also mention that they bringing back 2 running back, their top 2 running backs, their top quarterback, 2 of their top receivers this year. I mean, loaded. They didn't really lose anybody on the offensive side, and I think the defense, they were able to really keep their team together.
They were.
And this is a team that went toe-to-toe with TCU in their playoff game. Really probably should have won that game. But, yeah, the last couple of years, you look at what Big Ten team's been in the playoffs? It's the one that wins the game. And right now, Ohio State's on the losing end of that. And they're kind of the little brother right now to Michigan. And until they can beat them in the game with Ryan Day as the head coach, it's Michigan. Absolutely.
I think Penn's, we talk about it's been the game. I think Penn State this year is going to be good enough to beat either Michigan or Ohio State. I don't think they beat both of them, though. So I don't think certainly they could make it. I don't like it, though they're not going to be one of my 4 teams anyway.
Well, who's number 3 then? Who's number 3?
So I think, at least in my mind, after those first 2 is where it gets interesting. Most people are going to pick the first 2 that we had. For the third one, for me, it came down to, I think, whoever wins the ACC gets it. Clemson or Florida State. I'm going with the Seminoles to be one of the teams in.
Whoa, the Seminoles.
I think that O-line is going to be really good. They're going to run the ball really well. And I know you're a really big Jared Verse fan.
I am. Yeah, I love Jared Verse.
And
I was telling you all about him last year. Yep.
You were, and their cornerbacks might be the best duo in the country. Getting Fentrell Cypress, transferring in from Virginia is going to be a huge boost there. He's going to take away a lot of guys. And then Bernardo Green is another really solid corner that's going to be playing on Sundays.
And I think it's worth pointing out that I do think Florida State has a good secondary, but Florida State also gave up several of their secondary players this year to Colorado. I mean, the Prime walked in there and took like 3 of them. Yeah. So, and these weren't just guys that were sitting around not doing anything. These are guys that played the last few years. So I think that that's something that's going to come bite you at some point of the year. I think that Kevin Knowles is a really solid corner. I just think that his size sometimes is a disadvantage. He's only 5'9". Yeah. And we'll see. We'll see. I don't have Florida State in my top 4. That's for damn sure. But I'm gonna tell you
Okay.
who's my number 3, and it's a very familiar face, very familiar foe. It's Bama. It's Bama.
Okay.
Bama's number 3, and here's why. Because right now, I think that we're all talking about, oh, the dynasty's over, Georgia's overtaken them, whatever that is. No, come on, man. No, we all know how Alabama is. That's not the case. They're coming back strong. Now, the real question is who's going to end up playing quarterback. As far as I know, Jalen Milroe has been named the starter. Tell me, Hughes, who did Jalen Milroe remind you of on the field?
Oh. So I was not as impressed as a lot of people was with him. He ran the ball really well. We can't see him, or sorry, we haven't seen him throw enough for my liking. Comparison wise, though, I'm trying to think who I would. Honestly, I don't, not throwing as well yet. Jalen Hurts isn't a terrible comparison at this point.
Well, think of when Jalen was playing at Alabama. I mean, Jalen was not a great passer at Alabama until Dan Eno showed up in 2019. Yep. So, to me, I see young Jalen Hurts and Jalen Milroe. What did they do with Jalen Hurts again? What was that? Oh, back-to-back national championship appearances. We're all sitting here sleeping on Alabama going, they don't have a quarterback. They got a guy that's just like Jalen Hurts. That's why they're my number 3 team.
Okay. Fair.
You're number 4. Who is
I'm sure we will get into this many times throughout the season. I'm lower on Bama this year than I've been in 10 years.
Wow.
I still, don't get me wrong, I think they're still a 9 or 10 win team. We're not talking like they're not gonna be losers. They're still awesome. My number 4 team, and this was a tough one. The obvious one I think would be the USC Trojans, but I'm not going with them. I think the Pac-12 is pretty tough this year. I don't know that I like anybody to get out of that conference undefeated. So I was looking around, and I came to a team. They are going to be favored in 11 of the 12 games they play. The one game they will not be favored in, week 2 against the aforementioned Crimson Tide. I'm going with the Longhorns for number 4.
Can't say I blame you. I can't say I blame you at all.
Don't get me wrong. It's almost become a trope now that Texas is overrated, they underperform. They have, and I'm not usually high on them. This year I am though. Ewers is going to be good. Their O-line is going to be salty. They got a lot of pass catchers. I think they'll replace their running backs. Kwiatkowski's a good defensive coordinator. They got talent all over the field. And if you just look at their schedule, they're not going to lose many games unless they really get hamstrung by injuries. I think they'll beat Bama, like I said. They may not. They could lose that game, but still, we're potentially looking at a 12-1 team if they win the Big 12 title. It will be tough to keep them out if their only loss is week 2 to Bama. They probably get in if that's the case.
I'm glad that you mentioned Texas because that's a team that I really have been battling with. And I think that I couldn't quite justify putting them in the top 4. I think that, they're going to be favored in 11 of 12 games, but I think they're going to drop another one.
They might.
They're going to be 10. They're going to be 10-2 going into the playoff.
History would tell us they will, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. But no, I agree that Quinn Ewers is definitely going to be a weapon. So my number 4 team, I'm going against you in the ACC.
Okay.
I usually can't stand Clemson. You know this.
I know.
We've talked about
that.
this.
Yes. Yeah.
But looking at Clemson this year and looking at the perfect balance of youth, of veterans, of playing time, that is going to be an explosively dangerous team. I'm telling you, Clemson's my number 4.
Yeah.
And it's because Cade Klubnik is going to be serious. He's got receivers that he's been coming up with. Will Shipley, that defense. I can't see anybody in the ACC taking Clemson down this year. They got depth back now, finally. They've been able to build that back. They look really good. I'm going Clemson number 4.
Yeah, like I said, for me, whoever won the ACC was going to be my third pick, and I can't fault you for that one. It's a coin flip. They definitely could beat Florida State, and even losing Brissy, that front seven is going to be nasty on defense. Trotter comes back. Tyler Davis is going to be their nose, it looks like. Their other D-tech, like a
Hoku.
something.
Horo, yeah. Horo. He's amazing.
But they're going to be tough to run on. And, God, you almost have me rethinking myself now because think about the way I'm staying with my 4, but the way Florida State plays on offense, Clemson is well suited to handle them on defense for how heavy and stout they're going to be in the middle. So we're just on 2 different ACC teams, and I get it.
So, since we talked about the top 4 playoff teams before we start getting into rounds here, man, we probably have to talk about a sleeper playoff team. And I think it's pretty obvious we mentioned USC. You know, you have Texas in, I don't. I have Bama in, you don't. But who's outside of the teams we've already mentioned, who's kind of that sleeper? Like, if the stars line up, they're going to get in.
Washington Huskies.
Oh, snap.
Yeah, I think Kalen DeBoer is a stud. If he wants to be at an elite blue blood job in a year or 2, he will be. Their receiving core might be the best in the country. Penix is good. And I was trying to think of like an actual sleeper. Like, I didn't pick Clemson, Ohio State, but they're not sleepers really. But Washington would be. I'll say another team. I don't think they're a playoff contender per se, but I do think one of the most improved teams will be Texas A&M. I think they're going to be a lot better. So they might be another one, but if I would have to pick one sleeper actual playoff contender, I would probably have to lean on Washington. I'm trying to think of Big 12 wise. I can't think I don't think anybody else is going to be a sleeper playoff team out of that conference. Though,
well, here I'll give you one.
An interesting one is going to be Texas Tech, I think. But I don't know if they'll be that good. I think they'll be okay. But they're going to be better than people think, is how I feel.
Huh.
Now,
I'll give you a sleeper playoff team. You ready? Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yep.
Just saying.
No,
I'm not just because they beat the shit out of Navy, but just, you look at that's a team that if they can go undefeated and they can take down Clemson, they can take down I think they got USC on their schedule too. I mean, they've got a brutal schedule. If they come out of their 11-1,
they go to Ohio
they're
State
in.
Too. Yeah, they play Ohio State too, I believe.
Yeah, if they're 11-1, they're in.
Yeah,
and I think they've got the best quarterback they've had in a long time, Sam Hartman. They have the best team that they've had in a long time. We were watching him throw to freshman wide receivers last week, no problem. They're deep, they can rotate.
And they didn't give Estime a full game on Saturday, but when they do, he's legit. I mean, we saw it when he did play that he was special.
Yeah, and he won't play a full game again this week when they play Tennessee State, but I think Notre Dame is this. So we've got Washington and Notre Dame as the sleepers.
Yeah.
Let's get into the rounds here, man. This is what we do best.
Yeah.
We talk about the player, we talk about the teams, and we take our shots. Number 1, your first pick, Minnesota, -7.5. You like the favorites here over Nebraska. Talk about it. Where is this?
So, I think if you are going to play Nebraska this year, you want to play them early, and that's exactly what's happening with Minnesota. PJ Fleck has been extremely consistent, and when he's had a long time to prepare for teams, he almost always with Nebraska. I love the Matt Rule. All last year I was saying a team who had an opening should hire him. He did fantastic at Temple. He did fantastic at Baylor. However, he was not good in year 1. At Temple, they were 2-10. At Baylor, they were 1-11. he almost punts the first season. It's all about getting his guys in the system. He doesn't like, there are games where it will almost seem like they're on the path to win, and then they give it up because he'll put in all the young guys, he'll get everybody experience. And I think he views himself as a program builder. He knows they're not going to be a 9-10 win team this year. So I think it being week one and him being about getting guys in the system, I think that gives Minnesota enough to win and cover, just because, or not just, but in part because of how consistent they've been with Fleck and how high that floor is for them.
And I think that's fair. I'm not going to challenge you on this. I think that I actually have this in. This game's Thursday night. I have this bet in as well, because Minnesota really has a good team this year. I mean, the transfers that they managed to bring in, the offensive players that they have, the defense is going to be good. They're going to be a stout Big Ten team, and I agree with you. Nebraska's not quite there yet. Nebraska's a good while away. It's going to take time. I like Minnesota probably winning this by 2 touchdowns at least. So I like them at 7.5. I think that's a great pick right there. But I've got Hawaii at plus 3.5 underdogs over Stanford. And did this one surprise you when I sent it through? Was this one that kind of surprised you?
I love this pick. I absolutely love Hawaii. I thought this was your best pick. Like right away, I'm like, oh god, amazing pick.
I actually think Hawaii's got a really good shot straight up, which is why I went ahead and took this one. But Hawaii at plus 3.5. Hawaii came out there against Vanderbilt last week and looked much improved. I mean, across the board. Like Timmy Chang, it's Timmy Chang, right? That's the head coach.
Timmy Chang, head coach.
Yeah. So obviously, he's made quite a step forward this year. I think that was obvious, and we saw the same from Vanderbilt too. Honestly, which is usually that tells you that they're probably both going to be 5-win teams this year. But in this case, Stanford is that team that's just kind of, I don't know how I feel about them at all as a Pac-12 team.
I think they will be the worst P5 team in the country this year. I think
they very well may be. It's bad. You got a first-year head coach in here, right? I think, and now you've got
Troy Taylor. He was at Sacramento State FCS. He had previously been coordinator at Cal and Stanford, so has Pac-12 experience. But
it's still it's so bad. It's so bad.
Yeah,
it's so, like there's just no talent.
Their university is very stringent with accepting transfers, so they get almost nobody coming into the portal. So if you look at their depth chart, it's guys that were second and third stringers the last year or two, and they're just not that good. Urasek, the tight end, is legit. I'm proud to say I have him on my fantasy team, but they don't have a lot else. Is Lamson going to be their starting QB even? I don't even know if that's been enough.
Nobody knows. Nobody knows. So, like, that's another good telltale sign that things are not going great. You haven't announced your starting quarterback.
Yeah.
And we're 2 days before they play. This will be a Friday game, I believe. So, here, that's my point. I like Hawaii. I like what I saw from them. I think that with the air raid offense that they're running and the step forward that Brandon Schrager has taken as a quarterback this year, they have good potential. And they can go into this game and they can win it outright. So I liked Hawaii on that one. So no challenge from Mike on this one.
They look better than I thought they would last week. They gave Vandy a run.
Yeah, they totally destroyed my bet on that one. I definitely took Vandy. Okay. So against the spread. Oops. So round 2, Mike, you have decided to take Louisville -8 as the favorites over Georgia Tech.
I have.
Talk about it.
This is my one. This is out of my 5. This is the only one where I would say I'm very confident. I like Louisville. Braum is a good coach. They brought in a lot of guys in the portal. They're going to be good offensively. Plummer, has followed him after being with him at Purdue before. Jamari Thrash is going to be a stud receiver. He was at Georgia State. He's another guy to watch for.
Yep.
Kevin Coleman had been with Prime at Jackson State. And I really like the direction that Louisville is moving in. O-line wise, they should be a lot better. Eric Miller transferred in is going to be at left tackle, and John Paul Flores will be at left guard. So they brought in guys in the portal there. I'm also low on Georgia Tech. I didn't really like that they removed the interim take from Brent Key and named him head coach. They certainly got better when he was the interim last year. But if you look at the context and deeper, a lot of those were flukes, or maybe not flukes. They were playing teams that had a lot of injuries and in really bad circumstances when he got some of those wins. So, just because of those reasons, I think Louisville wins this. Had this spread been closer to 2 touchdowns, I might have scared away from it. But at 8, I was all over Louisville in this one.
Yeah, I had to agree with you. I took it too. So I'm not going to challenge this one. I did think that Louisville really had a really good offseason. Georgia Tech, they have a few players. I think their defense is going to be a little bit better than people think. But overall, I don't think it's going to be enough to stop this Louisville team. You may see, Jack Plummer make a run to be a draft pick toward the end. If he can have a really good year with Braum, I think that he's definitely going to make a case for it. So I'm going to go ahead and go with you on this one. I agree. But mine here, I'm wondering if I'm going to get a challenge because I took Utah State at plus 24.5 over Iowa. And the reason I went with Utah State is because, number one, Iowa doesn't typically score points. We all know that. They have a great defense. They don't score a lot. It's going to be a little bit different, though, this year because you've got Cade McNamara as the quarterback. You bring in Eric All with him. I still think it's going to be a struggle for points. And Utah State is going to make a couple big plays. So watch out. I like Utah State at plus 24.5. Give me 3 touchdowns and a field goal. I think Utah State can stay within that.
I thought hard about challenging this, but I'm not going to. And in reading up a bit on this game, Cade McNamara is probably not going to play. It sounds like he's dinged up. So if he was playing, I would have taken it for sure and challenged you. But we haven't seen Deacon Hill play enough. So Deacon Hill, the guy who back up at Iowa, presumably who will start at QB, he's a Wisconsin transfer, originally from California, and physically looks the part. He's 6'3" or 6'4", probably weighs about 250, 255. I mean, he is a thick, burly gentleman who's pretty athletic, but we haven't seen him enough. I'm not. And with the new clock rules, the way Iowa has played, I think that's not conducive to them covering such a big number. So I thought about it, and I think Utah State is going to be really bad this year. Like maybe a bottom 10 FBS team, but at this spread, I'm scared. No matter which team you would pick with this one, I would have been too scared to challenge it probably under what we know.
Good to know. I will keep that in mind throughout the rest of the year when doing these.
Yeah. It's also tough.
Moving on. So no challenges.
Not yet. There will be some coming though.
It's also tough to what now, Mike?
I said there will be. I said this first week is always tough to conceptualize sometimes because you have the ridiculously large spreads with P5 versus G5 games. So that makes it tougher too.
Absolutely. Moving on to round 3. You like Texas State at plus 27.5 over Baylor. 4 touchdown underdogs. Almost. 4 touchdown underdogs. As soon as I saw this, it had you written all over it. You actually selected both the Texas State quarterbacks who are former SEC guys transferred in this year on the fantasy team.
Yeah.
So as soon as I saw this one, I knew what you were doing, Mike. I saw it immediately. And explain this pick a little bit.
So one of the things that I liked about this game, the spread struck me as really big because early in the season, I like those teams who, when they have a coaching change, turn over the offensive coordinator, head coaching spot, and then you also bring in talent. you're going to get that immediate injection of offensive output. I like Texas State to do that. I don't think they win this game, but I don't think they lose by 4 touchdowns either. So it's totally a matter of, I think they're a little better, and I think that spread is too high. I also understand why the line makers made it where it is. Because of what we knew from last season, it probably was appropriate. But that's my thought process there.
It's an interesting one. So there is definitely more talent at Texas State this year than there has been in recent years. They've really bulked up on that offensive side. That's where most of the talent really is on the offensive side. There's not too much to the defense.
Yeah,
that's what concerns me.
Bo Corrales, receiver who had been at North Carolina and SMU, he's also there now. So, yeah.
That's what concerns me when I see this is, yes, it's a much improved offense, but I don't see a defense. And we have a Baylor offense that can put a lot of points on this team if they want to.
Yeah.
Blake Shapen did pretty well in these games last year. I think that we're talking about probably the best defense in the Big 12, which is not saying much. It's a Big 12, but I think it is the best defense in that team. So, Mike, I've challenged you.
Fair.
Challenged.
Okay.
Assessed on Texas Tech. I like Baylor covering that spread by 4 touchdowns. I think it's going to be right at 4 touchdowns too, and I'm going to win by half a point. That's my prediction.
Okay.
Meantime, I like Western Kentucky as the favorites over South Florida by 12.5 points. I saw this, and this struck me as an incredibly low line considering the matchup. I understand South Florida, new coach, new culture, all this stuff. Bring in the offensive coordinator from Tennessee, which, as a Tennessee fan, I didn't know the offensive coordinator's name until he took the job. So what does that tell you? The next thing that I was going to point out about this game is Western Kentucky has a really good offense. I mean, really good. They got a quarterback that's probably going to be drafted 4th, 5th round, maybe even sooner than that in next year's draft. They've got one of the best receivers, top 75 prospects in the country right now, Malachi Corley.
He'll probably be a round 2 pick, Corley.
Yeah, he will be. He's looking like a round 2, top 75.
Yeah,
just saying. I like Western Kentucky in this. I know that they're playing up to a higher conference. That's probably why it's 12.5. But that just struck me as almost like insulting to what Western Kentucky has. I think that they're going to smoke South Florida.
I don't think they're going to smoke them, but I'm also not going to challenge this one either. I think Western Kentucky's defense is going to be atrocious. I don't think they're going to stop anybody. So the last 2 years, they have been top 3 in the country in turnovers both years. In turnovers forced. They lost a lot of guys on D. I don't think they replicate the high turnovers forced they did the last 2 years, which means they're going to need to get into a lot of shootouts and be in them, and we'll have to score to win games. They will score a lot. I don't think that's up for debate. They're going to be as high powered as about anybody. I'm not as high on them overall, but in this game, USF was so terrible last year, and I don't like them, and I haven't seen enough to be confident in saying they're going to lose by less than 2 touchdowns, because I don't know that they will.
Yeah, it's also interesting to point out that was another school that Coach Prime raided with taking wide receivers from.
Yep, they got Horn. Yep.
And another one too. I can't remember exactly who off the top of my head, but yeah. So that wasn't exactly a team that was able to use the transfer portal very well last year. I mean, this past offseason anyways. I like Western Kentucky.
Xavier Weaver was the other one. That Horn and Weaver, because they're both going to start for Colorado. Yeah.
Yep. So, round 4, you like East Carolina plus 36.5 over Michigan. You like them covering a 5-touchdown spread.
Yeah, with the new clock rules, I do. That part of why I did this. there's so many variables in this one, but East Carolina actually I think is going to be pretty bad this year. But I also think for a first game, no Harbaugh and the running backs Michigan has, I think they run the ball a ton. And they probably win this game by 30 or 35. I'm going for them to win just under this amount because I think they'll take their foot off the gas relatively early and not risk anybody getting hurt and basically play about as conservative as you can.
That's fair. That's fair. But the thing is, I look at the Michigan team and I look at their depth chart and I go, it doesn't really matter who plays in this game. They're scoring points. I agree with you that East Carolina is going to be bad.
Yep.
I agree with that. I don't know if East Carolina scores in this game, but it'd be very difficult for me to see Michigan leaving this with like a 38-3 victory. I think this is going to be 42, 45-0, 45-3. I have to go ahead, Hughes. Our second challenge.
Okay.
I'm bringing it. I like Michigan covering that spread. And here's the other thing, too. I already took the liberty of placing bets on these challenges so that I can take my money and rub it in your face next week.
Okay.
I liked Washington. This my round 4 pick is I like Washington State at minus 11.5 over Colorado State. And here's why. Last year, we got to see Cam Ward play pretty well. And I think this year he's going to take a step up. Colorado State is a team that didn't do too well through the transfer portal. I think that they're totally overshadowed by Colorado at this point. Not a team that really has a lot of talent either. And when I look at Washington State, I think that they're going to be able to dominate both sides of this ball. And I'm not excited about Colorado State, their perspective. I don't like any of that. I like Washington State really winning this by at least 3 touchdowns. So 11.5, almost an insult to Cam Ward in that group.
Challenge.
Challenge.
I'm not as high on Wazoo as you are.
Wow.
They left a lot, I think, to be determined. They have good receivers. Ward did some really good things, some things not so good. They have a new offensive coordinator, Eric Morris, having left to be the head coach at North Texas. So their new O coordinator was the O coordinator at Western Kentucky last year. But I think Colorado State improves a lot. Jay Norvell's a pretty good coach. I think last year was almost treated as a year 0, getting their guys in the system, improving. I think they improve substantially this year. I'm not saying they're going to be, an 8-9 win team, but I do think the Rams get quite a bit better. And they have some good pieces. Clay Millen's done some good things. Almost their entire O-line are grad transfers that came in via the portal. So they're going to be a lot saltier up front. Kobe Johnson, their running back, is a grad transfer from FCS Power, North Dakota State. And he'll be able to play at that level. Defensively, I still have some concerns about the Rams, but I do think they're quite a bit better. So I am challenging this one.
Dang. I wasn't expecting you to challenge that one. I thought you were going to be on my side here, Hughes. I can't believe you. Freaking, never mind.
Not for that one.
Go there.
Yeah.
Round 5, New Mexico, plus 38.5. You like them covering the spread against Texas A&M, who you also kind of named as a team that would be much improved.
I do think they will be much improved. But to me, this is a ridiculous point spread. Things could be different with Petrino as the O coordinator. But last year, Texas A&M was one of the top 5 slowest paced teams in the country in terms of fewest snaps per game and time in between snaps. They really, really slowed the game down. Part of that was they weren't very good on offense. and their defense was quite good. DJ Durkin, D coordinator there, former Maryland head coach, who obviously has went through his own fires, but he is a good defensive coach, and they will be good on defense. Offensively, I think they improve, but this is 6 touchdowns they have to cover. I don't think, with the pace they played at, I just don't think they do it, especially when you're looking at 3 different running backs that might play. They're going to be giving a lot of these guys carries, and I just think the game runs out before they can get up by that many points.
This is fair. I'm not challenging this one. I'm actually agreeing with you on that. I don't see. I don't think Texas A&M is going to be as improved as you think they are. Personally, I think that they're probably a mid to low team in the SEC West. I think the SEC West is loaded because if you look at the coaches that you have to go up against: Nick Saban, Brian Kelly, Sam Pittman, now Hugh Freeze, Lane Kiffin. That's just the West.
Yeah,
that's just the West. I think that's brutal, even for a coach like Jimbo Fisher, who we're about to find out if he still has, what's the word I'm looking for? If he's still young in his soul, you know what I'm saying? Fair. Can stay with these times.
Yeah.
I think bringing in Petrino doesn't help personally.
I think it does, because Bobby's been good on offense wherever he's been, and Jimbo knew we had to shake things up a little.
I guess we'll find out, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I don't see a lot from A&M, but I do agree that New Mexico is probably going to go ahead and cover the spread. Now, my pick in the final round. Oh,
let me say one with A&M. I don't think there's any way they're not improved, because there's so much talent on. They've recruited so well. They have to get better, I think. There's 4 or 5 stars at every position. And history just tells us if your roster's that talented, you're almost always going to win most of your games. And I think they will.
Whatever happened in that locker room last year was a disaster.
Oh, awful.
Yeah.
Terrible. Yeah.
I have no idea what it was, but would love to hear stories. If you played at Texas A&M last year, you have a story to tell, please contact at Draft Vogel.
Yeah.
So my pick here is I like LSU -2.5 over Florida State. And I'm sure this probably rubs you the wrong way because you did pick Florida State to win the ACC. Here's my deal. I think that LSU was really good last year. I think LSU probably should have beat Florida State last year. And I think that they've got this game circled. They've got this game circled, and they're coming in. They're much improved. They hammered the transfer. We thought they hammered the transfer portal last year. They hammered it this year. I mean, they are loaded. They've got 5 running backs that they can rotate. They've got, Jaden Daniels, and who's now had a year in that system. Their receivers are loaded. Their line is loaded. Their defense is loaded. I mean, I don't think that it's particularly close between LSU and Florida State. I think that LSU might blow them out, which is crazy to say. But I think that this opening game, if things start off badly for Norvell and Florida State, I think they fold. I'm not as high on Jordan Travis as a lot of people are at quarterback for Florida State. So I'm taking LSU here. I like them at 2.5. I might even take an alt spread come Sunday night if I had a really good weekend making money. I might take an alt spread and buy more points.
I'm going to, no surprise to you, I'm going to challenge this one. And I'm kind of with you on LSU. I think they win the SEC West this year. But Mason Thomas is out, which I think is a big loss. He's a good player. John Emery is out. I think it hurts him less. Logan Diggs and Co. at running back are still going to be pretty good. But I feel like Florida State has, on offense, a lot of continuity. Everybody knows what they're doing, especially running the ball, and they're going to run the ball a lot, and they're going to be good at it. They did add Keon Coleman to go with Johnny Wilson at receiver. Also, the weather might be just atrocious during this game, and I think that will help Florida State as the run-heavy team. Though it's not like LSU would be pass happy either by any stretch. But
No, LSU's going to be run heavy
yeah,
this year too. They've got 5 running backs,
yeah,
bro. They got to rotate a lot of guys.
they do, yeah. But we know Florida State's going to run the ball a lot, and for me, at 2.5, I almost think it comes down to who do you think is going to win the game. I'm going to go with the Seminoles because they have more continuity and they're playing closer to home. So I had to think a lot about this one. I was waffling if it's worth it or not. Am I giving you 5 points? But I'm going to challenge this one and go with Florida State to cover.
So we've got 4 challenges. That means that's the first thing to point out. 4 challenges in this. The next thing to point out here is I'm just going to read some names off to you that are on this team. These are just the familiar names at LSU. You ready?
I'm ready.
Greg Brooks Jr., Major Burns, Noah Kane, Jaden Daniels, John Emery Jr., Miles Frazier, he was a starter last year, Jacobian Guillory, Kyron Lacey, Ovi Ogavu, Omar Spates, transfer from Oregon State, probably a draft pick at linebacker, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., Greg Penn III, Logan Diggs, running back, transfer from Notre Dame. That's 3 running backs I've already named. Here's another one. Armani Goodwin. Mason Taylor. Darian Chestnut. And you know who I'm missing on this list that I haven't made a profile for? And because I'm pulling these names straight out of my draft document. I'm skipping a lot too. But Harold Perkins.
Yep.
That team.
He's probably the best. Well, it's funny. I might be wrong about this, but correct me here. This game might have the 2 best defensive players in the country, Bruce and Perkins.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Very well.
Absolutely.
Good. Yeah.
Now, Florida State, they've got a lot of great. They did a lot of work, and they definitely have a very tall receiving unit. So I could see that too. Yeah. I think LSU is going to be able to take command of this game.
They didn't hammer. They didn't. Florida State has never hammered the portal a ton volume-wise, but the positions they've targeted, they've gotten very good players. Mm-hmm. So you look at this year, they needed a tight end. They went and got Shaheem Bell from South Carolina and Kyle Morlock. On the O-line, they got Jerry Byers from UTEP and then Casey Roddick. Keon Coleman comes in at receiver. I already talked about bringing in Fentrell Cypress at D-back, and then Braden Fisk at D-tackle comes in from Western Michigan, where he was a pretty good player in the MAC.
Yeah, and so, I think he was the best defensive lineman in the MAC.
Probably was.
Yeah. He was. Yeah. Yeah. So no, they definitely went. They got some really good players. I think LSU is going to be able to take command of this game. Brian Kelly showed us last year what of his coaching prowess. We kind of had the question: is he going to fit in the SEC? Is he going to make it? Yeah. No problem. Brian Kelly took care of business. He's got more talent than he's ever had. It's gonna. I think it's a game that if things go badly for Florida State initially, which I'm thinking they will, I could be wrong, but if things go bad for Florida State initially in the first couple quarters, it's not something that they're going to be able to recover from. That's my pick. So that's our 4 challenges on this one. And just another reminder: last year's champion was whose? And guess what? That crown's coming down, buddy. It's coming down.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
I'm studying the MAC like it's my best friend. You know what I'm saying? We're doing some research. Not going to take me with the MAC this year.
No. We'll see. We'll see about that. Yeah.
So, who do you like for the Heisman this year?
I'm going to have 2 trains of thought here. Caleb Williams has to be the bettor's favorite. Like, I don't think there's any way you can make it so it's anybody else. However, I don't think he wins it. in part because it's so difficult. He almost has to surpass what he did because of how historically difficult it has been to win two. We had one guy do it, and it was almost 50 years ago. Mm-hmm. Bryce Young got hurt. And we've had guys in recent years. Jameis Winston lost one game the year after he won it, and he didn't win the Heisman. Tebow, Manziel. I mean, we have these guys that have been back and then not,
the There's next a lot of them now. Yeah.
Yeah. So also, he got dinged up a little bit late last year. And if you miss a game, that might take you out of the running unless your stats are ridiculous. Certainly, if you miss two, you're not going to win it. Your team probably has to win 10 games. Trojans will. But other guys, I don't know that Drake May's team is good enough for him to win the Heisman. If his numbers are ridiculous, which they might be, he'll get an invite probably. Going to be tough for him to win it, though. Blake Corum will get votes, but it's going to be tough, I think, for a running back to do it. The same.
Derrick Henry was the last one, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
I think only 3 since 2000 have won it. 2 of them played for Nick Saban.
Shocker. Mark Ingram.
Yeah. And another one, I don't know that his team will be good enough. Quinshaw Judkins is the best running back in the country. But I don't think they'll be good enough to do that. If my playoff predictions come true, Quinn Ewers is almost certainly in New York. They make the playoffs, he gets an invite. But I mean, I guess I haven't given a definitive this guy will win it. And I don't know that I could. Like I said, Williams has to be the favorite, but it's going to be tough for him to do it again. Jordan Travis, a lot of people are putting him high on the list. I don't know that I would, but maybe. Michael Penix is a guy people are talking about. What are other names that Kyle McCord, just by being Ohio State's QB. But like you said, if Jalen Milroe was Alabama's QB for all 12 games, he's probably going to be talked about just because those positions at those schools are going to necessitate it. If Penn State wins 10, 11 games, Drew Alar might get talked about. Mm-hmm. And they're going to be a salty team this year. Who are some guys that you like, whether I've mentioned them or not?
Caleb is definitely the favorite. I don't think he wins at the end of the year, but he's coming in as the favorite, and until he's dethroned, he is a favorite. He put up gaudy numbers again against San Jose State, so you're not worried about the numbers thing right now. Now, I like Quinn Ewers a lot.
Yeah.
I think that he's right now is the number 3 quarterback prospect in the NFL draft.
Probably.
Behind, May and Williams. I think that Ewers is the guy that potentially makes a run, and throws his name in there during the draft process as a guy that the teams are going to like. But we don't really see NFL draft, like the Heisman translate over to it.
Certainly.
It doesn't happen all the time. It's not consistent. So it tends to lead me to think that there's probably going to be a player that is not as high on the draft side that has a really good shot of winning it, and I have to think that's JJ McCarthy.
Could be. Another one I thought of, I don't know if this guy's team wins enough games, but KJ Jefferson is going to break SEC records and hold all the Arkansas records. So I think KJ's a guy.
KJ could definitely,
JJ McCarthy could be a sneaky guy, though, whose team is going to win a ton of games. I wonder, though, with him, do him and Corum split votes too much? You got to think logistically for the voting, the geographic patterns of it.
I'll give you one more name because, and it's really because last year in this offense we saw a quarterback making a very serious push at the Heisman before he tore his ACL, and this year that system has a quarterback with probably the strongest arm in that we've seen in a long, long time, and that's Joe Milton at Tennessee.
He literally may have the strongest arm on planet Earth in just terms of how far he can throw a football. Another guy,
he is insane.
Another guy we should mention is Bo Nix. He is in the conversation. I don't think he gets it, but Bo Nix is a guy who deserves to be in the conversation.
Exactly. No, agree with that because Bo's put up good numbers at Oregon. This is his second year in that system. If we see some, a step forward from him this year, that could make him the guy. So yeah, there's a lot of guys that we could talk about. You know who might split votes for from Caleb based on what we saw week 0 and what I've seen from him in high school is Zachary Branch.
Yeah. And
you see that guy?
Also in a geographic sense, Nix and Penix might too. Because just being on the West Coast, those
that's
that
fair.
could happen. Yeah. Branch looked good though.
I guess the last name we should mention is probably Sam Hartman. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because
fair.
At Notre Dame, you put a good year together at Notre Dame. That's you put a great year. Not a good year. You put a great year together, which Hartman could potentially do. We're gonna be talking about him as a Heisman guy too. So a lot of names. A lot of names floating around out there.
He holds several ACC records. To your notion too, if you're as hot, if Clemson's as good as you think they are, Klubnik could be a guy too.
Yep, Cade Klubnik. Yep, he definitely could.
Yeah.
And he's. I'm telling you, man. I was watching him against North Carolina and against Tennessee, and he makes some plays, and you sit there and go, "Wow." I'm still trying to figure out if he is a rhythm and timing passer, or if he's an improviser. I think he's kind of a little bit of both. So
he could be.
I like it. I like him a lot. But anyways, you got anything else you want to get into before we wrap this thing up, Hughes?
I don't know. It was a good first show.
Yeah, it was solid. I finally had fresh tape. I've been grinding it. I've got through pretty much all week 0 at this point now. Thank God. I had fresh stuff to look at because that 22 stuff, man, you watch that over a year, it gets stale. Back at it next week. Games, college football is on tomorrow night. We can't be more excited. I'm sure that everybody else out there can't be any more excited. It's going to be fun, man. It's going to be a good freaking year. So 4 challenges. Let's also review those real quick. I've took the liberty of posting them on the Gridiron Eve page.
Oh, nice.
So I will review them. Our first challenge, I challenged you on Texas State at plus 27.5 over Baylor.
Yep.
I think Baylor covers. You think that Texas State will get the against the spread upset. I challenged you on East Carolina at 36.5 covering Michigan. I think Michigan covers. You think East Carolina breaks that. You challenged me on Washington State at minus 11.5. You think Colorado State has the chance to upset against the spread. And challenged me against LSU at 2.5 over Florida State. I think Florida State wins outright. So 4 challenges, 20 points on the line. I hope you're ready to come down 20-0.
Okay. That might have happened week 1 last year. I started off very poorly.
I think all the challenges last week in the first show, you went down. I do believe that it did happen. I remember that. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this thing up, guys. Thank you for tuning in to Gridiron Eve. Make sure that you follow him at Huesmann CFB. Follow me at Draft Vogel. Follow the show at Gridiron Eve on X. I finally got used to saying it. It's on X now.
Yeah.
Not Twitter. RIP. Now we're ready to go. So thank you, as always, for joining and doing the show. And let's have a great college football season.